Welcome back to theCUBE's live coverage here at the Moscone Center in San Francisco, Databricks' Data and AI Summit. I think theCUBE has covered every single event at Databricks, following it from inception through now maturization and global expansion. AI intelligence is injecting into the business. The AI infrastructure is building out super fast with supercomputing, brings in higher performance and opportunities we haven't seen. We've got two great guests here to unpack what's going on at the data layer that unifies transactions, analytics, real-time systems into one so that agents can perform their best in physical AI and whatever comes next. We got Bryan Clark, who's the Director of Product Management at Databricks. Great to see you, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We've got the big product on stage, LTAP, and Grant Veazey, CTO of Ensemble Health. You guys are working hard to make sure everyone has what they need. Healthcare is huge. It's one of those use cases that pops with AI, so
absolutely.
Looking forward to talking to you. Bryan, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
LTAP transactional center stage really is the final piece of the puzzle on that unification. There's probably some other things, but in terms of the big things, it's, I think, a really strong piece for Databricks to complete. Even Ollie's like, in the old days we had Spark, data engineering, and then you got warehouses and real time, now transactions come together. This is not an easy thing for an enterprise to grapple with. They were traditionally departments, technologies. What is the key to LTAP?
Well, it's really, it's the single copy, right? Like the difficulty before was managing multiple copies of databases, brittle pipelines, trying to understand how you're moving data back and forth. And those are the things that the LTAP really solves, right? The difficult part on our side is that we're now translating row-based format, this Postgres format, directly into a columnar format. And so there's a bit of work there, but it's deterministic. Right? That work is solvable, and then it creates this system where now you have an open format. Customers have all existing tools they can use to read that and do things that they've always done. What
was the trade-offs to make that consolidation happen, and how should people think about it, and how should CIOs and CTOs look at OLAP and online transaction processing? What is the trade-offs, and how should people think about this?
Yeah, well, instead of something like an HTAP, right, where you're trying to use the same query engine to do different jobs, and really your trade-off is now it doesn't work well on certain things, you're using different query engines. So customers have to say, like, I'm going to use my analytics query engine for analytics data, and then I'm going to use the Postgres query engine for the operational data. And they have to understand that up front, but you get the best of both worlds in that case.
Great, talk about your environment, Ensemble Health. What do you oversee? What's your purview, and how do you look at this? Because, I mean, you have a lot of legacy, modern legacy, and current modern stuff happening, because AI is a perfect storm of innovation for healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. We were lucky enough to be partners at Databricks for over 3 years, but like a lot of people, we spent a lot of time building out a data lake platform to be able to do analytics. And now with the age of agents, we've gotten to the place where we need to get that same level of data to those agents in a much faster way to be able to start to do those things like reasoning and actually take action instead of that analytics. So while the core foundation was great for us to be able to do analytics across the board, now we needed the ability to do something that was more real time instead of making copies into transactional databases, creating custom pipelines every time we changed what the agent needed or how we wanted to reason about it. So it really has been a huge use case for us to be able to take the huge data asset we have in healthcare and take that to action to drive care.
I want to pause for a second. Pain that, because you just laid out, I'm like, oh my God, the old way. So lay out the old way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's the new way look like? And just scope the pain and suffering, slog fest you got to take through, and then what that turned into.
Right, so a perfect use case for us was building a clinical appeal agent in which we were going to be able to take information that we'd curated through our data lake to be able to reason on what was the clinical justification. You have an argument between a healthcare provider and an insurance company on whether this was clinically necessary or not. So we built a clinical reasoning reasoning agent to do that. Yeah. What we would have to do is, what are the data elements we needed to get to that agent to make that determination? Some of it was external, some of it was internal. We would have to figure out all those data elements. We would create a custom pipeline and create a transactional data store in which that agent could consume that data. And then once we tweaked it and went through hill climbing and like, oh, it's doing pretty good, but now we think we need a couple more pieces of data. Let's go back to the lake, let's create another custom pipeline, and let's do that all over again. And we went through 5 iterations. That's the old way. Right.
Okay, just what's the time frame on that? Because what was the duration of that, just estimate, ballpark?
Probably each pipeline was a week or 2, 3 or 4 iterations, a month or 2.
And what's that now in terms of timing? Agents are doing it for you on the fly, coding agents happening?
Hours and days.
All right, so weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah, and that's just compounding the problem of like the brittle pipelines, right? If
Absolutely.
Agents are moving different pieces within there, your web is starting to break really fast.
The MCP server was mentioned a lot up there. How does agents actually perform? Actually, with some really candid demos around, if you don't have the context, find those authoritative snippets. What's your view on agents? How are you evaluating your agent deployments? Because basically Databricks was very straight up saying, hey, we're not ready for prime time in a lot of situations here.
Right.
So, I mean, that's honest.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we have to be very careful. We're in a very highly regulated arena, and it's very important that we have that accuracy. So in a lot of places, we're still leaving human in the loop from that perspective, but we're spending a lot of time on observability and traceability of those agents, and that's helping as well, is that we can take those transactions of what we're seeing, write those back to that same Lakebase architecture, have that consumed right back into the lake structure, so we can build out that observability and traceability.
Brian, I mean, I guess a little bit hyperbole saying it's not ready for prime time. If hype was the meter, it would totally be prime time, but it is a serious consideration for enterprise. The coding momentum from last year going into this year, and even halfway through this year, I think enterprises go, I get it. This is not rag search and kind of, good marketing copy. That's real productivity. What's your view on how the agents will perform now that you got unification? What's the sequence of events that move it from enthusiasm to maybe confident workflows that you can bet on? When does it get non-deterministic and generative?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, our view has been, Lakebase has branching built in, right? And the reason we built that was for developers to be able to work like they work in Git. Right? You create a branch, you have an isolated environment, you can try things, but now that agents are accelerating development, to us, that's the piece. I don't know that it's going to become less non-deterministic than it is now, as much as I'm going to run more agents, they're going to be more powerful, but you're still going to run them in an experimental fashion. You're going to say, hey, here's a copy of this data, maybe I've removed all the PII and all the other information I wouldn't want an agent to be able to run through, but then once they run through that experiment on that isolated environment, you can then have a supervising agent kind of review and get back to the human in the loop.
Grant, talk about the organizational challenges, because now you have agents coming, you got to look at the architecture. How do you view that change management piece? Because obviously you got the lake house and the data lakes and all the good technology. What is the challenge as a CTO? It used to be called herding cats, now you're going to be herding agents?
Yes.
So how do you look at the personnel organizational impact as a leader?
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift completely of starting to look agent first. And I think the technology allows us to do that, but what we're talking about is we have to stop looking at data as analytics and looking at data as bits and pieces of behavioral data to drive action and reasoning. And so it comes back to, again, making sure that you have good ontologies, which we're excited about some of the things that were announced today on that. Good ontologies, good observability, and really looking as an agentic first approach, but change is difficult.
Did you have a hand in the ontology product on the front end?
We did not, but we're excited to get our hands on them.
Okay, what are you going to do with it? What's going to be the action step there? Because ontologies open up a lot of doors for software to do things.
absolutely. For healthcare, I think the ontology is paramount. We've worked on a lot of things internal to kind of build out that ontology ourselves already to this day, but understanding that relationship between denial codes, clinical documentation, RARC and CART codes from payers, understand how all that comes together is the fuel for the AI that we see in the future.
Brian, I have a joke with my kids when they were younger. I used to walk to school with bare feet in the snow. I mean, ontologies used to have to be hard coded by hand back in the old glory days. Yep. Not to date myself, but now with automation, some of the intelligence, what does this open up for customers, and how would you explain ontology today, and what it does, what it is, what is an ontology today, what does it mean, how should people think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think about it like agent dreaming. I think that's the easiest way to think about it, is like at night, in the background, the agent is kind of like pulling the different pieces and building this graph and like reproducing the memory of what exists in your data plane. Because like Ali said, either every time you talk to it, it's going to try and spider out its way and spend a bunch of time looking at different docs, or in the background, it had figured this out and built kind of a memory map of like where things are, and then it can just go directly to where the information is instead of trying to reason about it from first principles every time.
And scaling is real.
Yeah.
So ontologies have scale and does a lot of prep work. How do you see that envisioning for you guys on the agent side and the human in the loop piece?
We have a ton of unstructured data in healthcare as well. So the first step of going from unstructured data to that structured data and then being able to build those relationships in that ontology is one of the things that's paramount for us to be able to understand what are those relationships. And healthcare is not as consistent as we'd all love it to be. And where we can find those patterns in ontology kind of in a more dynamic way and having to coding them all by hand and turning that up to opinions. And specifically we talk about opinions of doctors or versus insurance companies.
You can't recognize the handwriting.
Exactly, exactly.
Computer vision doesn't work well on that. I mean, this brings up a really good point about friction. In healthcare and regulated, all regulated industries I've covered, it's always been but they've done a lot of data work. There's a lot of prep, tagging. In a way, they did all the right things for the wrong reasons.
Right.
HIPAA, it's a disaster, but now you have all that data tagged and then combined with the unstructured. So how do you see that friction being taken out? Abstraction layers? How do you holistically look at leveraging the asset of the data estate, the legacy, and what's your innovation strategy to make the friction come out of that so that innovation can spawn?
I think there's still a bit of an interoperability problem completely across healthcare, but I think some of the advances we're seeing are going to allow us to possibly step over those or make those easy to bridge as we go forward. And again, a lot of what we're seeing from the data, if we don't have the interoperability, we're able to kind of reverse engineer with all these pieces and parts and basically have the agents understand what is happening on the other side without that interoperability. All
right, most important question I get asked all the time is, I'm really struggling, this is the preamble, I'm really struggling with pilots to production. Recently we've seen headway around accelerating production workloads with generative AI and now some agents that have structured workflows. What's your experience on your production strategy? How do you think about moving stuff from pilot, sandboxing, however you want to call it, into production? Is it a narrow road? Is it getting bigger? What's your thoughts on getting stuff into production at scale?
Yeah, I think the more you do it, the faster it gets, but when we look at our use cases, again, we try to look at human in the loop's a big part of that, the ability to hill climb, starting with the standards of what we want to be able to do from a workflow and get out of that is start small, and lots of times it may be, don't try to eat the entire elephant at one time, pick out a subsection or a sub-process of that, see if I can start to get real results in that, and then start to build from there. It also builds the confidence. In our industry, human in the loop is huge. You get those doctors, those nurses, they want to have hands on making sure that that's important and getting that feed loop back, and then once they start to trust it, it makes it a lot easier.
You must get a lot of laundry list items when, hey, what we can do with AI? Innovate with AI. I mean, everyone I talk to at a CTO or CIO level, it's like, yeah, the list is like miles long. So prioritization becomes a big thing. So I want to ask you your philosophy on this. We've heard different schools of thought on prioritizing AI projects because it's not an IT project.
Absolutely.
It's a business transformation model transition. So people are saying, whoa, I know where the revenue is, I know where my problems are that I couldn't get to with non-supercomputing technology. So the lens shifts with the new conditions. What's your thoughts on how you scope and look at and identify and prioritize?
Yeah, at Ensemble, we maybe take a little different approach than I hear a lot of people taking. It's a whole lot less about trying to get cost savings for us in automation. It is to be able to solve problems we weren't solving before. So if you take a denial for an example, if our final denial rate is still 3%, how do we use this to shrink that down to 1% or closer to 0% and drive more and more revenue for our clients and the providers? And so we look through that lens a lot of how we prioritize what are the things that we're able to solve problems that we couldn't solve before.
Yeah, I mean, you know what the problems are.
Right, we know the problems.
And they have impact on people's lives. And everyone's having a story where they didn't get approved in surgery or this didn't happen. So I really appreciate that. Congratulations on that. Bryan, final question for you is, next 12 to 18 months, what are you optimizing for? What can we see from you and your team on the product side?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you saw, but we have cross-cloud disaster recovery. So we've built out the platform in order to move data to different regions, different clouds. So beyond just cross-cloud disaster recovery, we'll be able to have replicas in different regions. You'll be able to switch over. And one of the things we were talking about earlier is how I now have customers who are actually using this to hunt down cheap GPU. Something that was built for disaster recovery to say, well, when a cloud is down, I want to move from this cloud to this cloud. But now, instead of that, customers are saying, I want to pick up my data and push it over here because GPUs are cheaper over there. Yeah. So can you move my data over to that thing? So that's the next, I mean,
we're running out of time. We didn't even have a chance to talk about cyber resilience. Yeah. Just in a nutshell, built in from day one, what's your thoughts on cyber resilience?
Yeah, for us in the regulated energy, security, cyber is always a first-class citizen, first non-functional requirement of everything we do.
And on your side, Panther?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, integrating everything with that so that agents can be like assisting in preventing intrusion.
And Panther's in your future?
Yeah.
On the acquisition. Sure. Thanks for coming on. Guys, thanks so much. Yeah. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE, breaking it down. A lot of technology coming together. Again, transactional processing runs the business. Analytics tells you what it is. All's happening in real time around all the first principles of data, hygiene, and scale. Databricks is bringing that to the, and of course the AI infrastructure is booming. More and more horsepower allowing you to solve problems that could not have been solved before. New opportunities for entrepreneurs and enterprises. Thanks for watching theCUBE. We'll be right back after this short break.